We can reach a point in life, and this is where I'm so big on saying, I have enough. I have enough world. Like, I don't have to make more money. I have enough, and I have a financial plan, and I can see how it's going to be okay. And I understand that even if it all fell apart, I'm going to be totally comfortable. Probably my husband's like, I'll go to work at Home Depot. And I'm like, okay, I'll go find some. I like waiting tables, actually. It's kind of weird, but like, we'll find something. We're going to be okay. And just from the ability to operate with like, no matter what, we're going to be okay, it changes your whole entire life.
Welcome back, or welcome to the Conscious Investor Podcast. This is the show where we talk about health, mindset, and wealth building strategies. I'm your host, Julie Holly, and Conscious Investor, I'm so grateful that you are here on this beautiful Thursday. And these Thursdays are so special. I know that we love Mondays because it's just you and I, and we're talking about mindset. And Thursdays, we look forward to those because we get to have a guest join our conversation. And all of our guests on the show just pour into us in our health, mindset, and wealth. And today is no different. I have been acquainted with Lisa for a few years now. And yet I haven't had her on the show. I don't know why not, but I want to let you know how we met. And you see a recurring pattern. And the reason I like to share this with you is because there are some fundamental first principles that we can gain from this. I met Lisa at an event. What? You've heard me say that so often. I know that it's really easy. And sometimes we want to, kind of just hang out and maybe do a virtual event or just hang out in the comfort of our home or our community. But when we're willing to hop on a plane and travel and go to an event, we have a very different experience. And I was so blown away 3 years ago now when I heard Lisa on stage talking about her journey in real estate and finance and investing, personal development. I mean, we're talking like a very holistic conscious investor joining us today. And I know you're going to love the conversation. But when we go to events and when we develop friendships, then we have an opportunity to really expand ourselves and to support people around us in a really strong way. So I want to encourage you, and this wasn't a backhanded way, I promise, Conscious Investor, of saying, come to the Conscious Investor Growth Summit. But I do want to encourage you, come to the Conscious Investor Growth Summit because it is a holistic place. It's taking place March 7th, 8th and 9th of 2025 at the Coeur d'Alene Resort. It's going to be beautiful. And the caliber of people that are going to be attracted to the event are the type of people that you want to get to know and you want to surround yourself with. So that's how I meet so many extraordinary people. That's how I met Lisa. And now let's get Lisa on the show because I know we both want to hear from her. Lisa, thanks so much for joining us today on the Conscious Investor Podcast.
Thank you, Julie, for having me.
I'm so excited for just the opportunity. I'm so excited about this conversation because I know you and I have such a shared heartbeat on personal development, on, finances and such, that I'm just so excited to get to know you better as we have this conversation. And I'd be doing everyone a disservice if I didn't start with the question of all questions. And Conscious Investor, you know that question. And you're asking it in your mind, so I'll ask it aloud. Lisa, what do you do and how did you get started?
Wonderful question. The thing that comes to me because I'm semi-retired, I will say that proverbial, I get to do what I want, when I want, where I want, with who I want. And that's what I do these days. But I am also a coach. I'm an author. I am a speaker. And those are things to me at this stage in my career. It's all about giving back, helping people figure out some of the things that have taken me 30 years to learn. If they can learn it in a couple minutes, I love sharing that wisdom.
I absolutely love that. Tell us more.
I was a financial advisor. I was a mortgage banker. I was an executive in banking and also in insurance. And so eventually I got my certified financial planning designation. But my husband and I, he's a general contractor. We've been investing in real estate for over 30 years. And we've done so many different things. Like it's allowed me to not just for us to build financial freedom, but also to just learn the things that we like to do, the things that aren't really a good fit for our personalities. But we love real estate for the incredible life that we have as a result of decisions we made back in 1992 when we were just about to get married. My husband built our first home, and that was the beginning of this love affair with real estate.
And it's been an interesting love affair with real estate. I just remember one of your stories. And we all have these stories. We have to have at least one story. But what was that like when you were involved? At what point did it click for you guys that, wait a second, we're on to something and we need to make sure that we're doing more of this real estate thing?
Yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't our first project. It was in Redding, California, where my husband had grown up. We would build that house and watch it lose value, which is almost impossible when you've built something, with your bare hands. But sure enough, it lost value, even though we lived in it until 1998. So our first endeavor was not a good situation. Thankfully, we stayed with it, and we ended up getting into a remodel in the Bay Area that we doubled in value, and the rest is history. But what ended up happening is I think I realized early on, because of that bad experience, that it's all about the market that you build or you buy in. It's got to be the right market. And if you don't pick the right market, it could be a big risky situation for you. And so since then, my husband and I have only lived in absolutely gorgeous, desirable places. And while Redding is really pretty, it wasn't where I wanted to live. I'm from the Bay Area, and it was sort of a compromise. But yeah, it was a great lesson because we've lived in Lake Tahoe, Truckee, we've lived in Sedona, Arizona, we lived in Walnut Creek. In those markets, we always did well with our investments.
I love that because my husband and I have a very similar philosophy of, just like living in the epicenter of where you really want to be. Because we grew up in Modesto, California. That's our hometown. And so it's like, and I know you know where that is. So it's like,
yeah.
And if you're watching on YouTube, you see my face. It's like, okay, what do you do there? Like, it's just suburbia, and there's nothing to do there. It's not beautiful in and of itself. So he had lived in South Lake Tahoe. We lived in Denver. I'm looking at my window at beautiful mountains. Like, no, let's just live in a beautiful place. And if we want to go vacation somewhere boring, we can, but let's live in the beauty. And there's something powerful. And I can't ask this of everyone, but since you have chosen that path, what do you find? Okay, let me restate this. We've noticed that it just enhances life so much when you're living in a place that you love, that you love the aesthetics of. It brings you peace. For us, we're with our family. So have you found a value to actually living in beautiful places?
Well, there was a bumper sticker I remember seeing many years ago, and it's like, we live in places that other people vacation. And it really summed up living in Truckee, Tahoe for many years where my kids were growing up. But there are sacrifices, no question about it, to decide to live in more rural areas, to live in places where people vacation. But once we figured out how fun and enjoyable it is, that you don't have to go home on Sunday night, you don't have to be in the traffic that people deal with. It was hard for me at first because I was very driven. I had a big job with a large bank in San Francisco. I thought, how could I ever want anything other than this incredible life? I travel the country. I go to the best restaurants. I'm making a lot of money. I have it all, is what I thought. And then when we moved to Tahoe, it took me 3 years of telecommuting back in early 2000 to realize that I was missing out on this whole life that was happening in Truckee, that my husband and my daughter were getting involved in, but I couldn't because my job wasn't based in the area. And I thankfully just had this moment of, I need to do this. Like, I really need to be here. And once I got involved in the smaller town and the community, like everything improved in my life. Like, it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. And being in beautiful places, you feel the sense of awe on a regular basis. You feel this sense of peace. You feel more connected to not just the nature, but to other people, because the life is slower, the pace of life is slower. Like, all of those things, I think, have made myself and my family, each and every person in my family, a better human as a result.
The awe and grandeur of where I now live, and I've lived here for going into winter number 9. And that's something that there's not been a day where I haven't just been like, this is a postcard and it's beautiful. And to have that perspective also of all of the mountains, everything around, just reminding, like, those mountains have been here for eons, and they're going to be here longer than I'm ever going to be alive. And what a beautiful thing that I get to walk this earth and live in this beautiful place for this period of time. What do I, it's very deeply grounding. I've noticed.
Yeah. I think my daughter definitely, she lives in South Lake Tahoe now, and she's like, I can't live anywhere else. I will see what happens for my son, but I think it's very infectious.
Yeah. Once you live in a beautiful place, I was like, I don't know that I could. Yeah, I will go visit. I'll go visit. That's what I'll do. So let's go back to real estate for a moment. And wait, let me just do a little sidebar, conscious investor. Is that the real estate of your heart and soul is really important. And so you want to be mindful of where you're placing your own personal real estate, in your life, so that it is something that can grow and flourish, because you'll show up in a different way to the world around you. But going back to your point about the market, and you guys had that aha of like, oh, wow, it really just matters what's going on in the market. What were some of the indicators that you were looking for that allowed you to be successful in your investing?
One of the primary ways that we've built wealth is by building homes from the ground up and living in them for a few years and then selling them and doing it again. And so we did that many times in Tahoe. We have done it here in Sedona. And so the market where we'll make the most amount of money is probably with timing, right? So if we're early to a trend when we think the house is going to be worth, one amount, like the house we're in right now, I thought, we decided to build it, I figured it was going to be worth between $850,000 and $900,000. But because of the way that the timing of the market is, it went to 1.2, 1.3 million. And so all of that additional gain was not expected. I would have still made the investment based on what it cost to build. But that's where we've really benefited, is the timing. And it hasn't always worked out, but not all markets bear that kind of increase in value. Very few markets. We've gotten lucky, and we've also been strategic that these were desirable places that we saw good signs around. So someone who does a buy and hold is going to have completely different metrics of what they're looking for than often what we've been looking for in that structure.
So I love this. So your strategy is, I'm going to do the baseline of it. Hey, we're going to build a beautiful house in a beautiful place. We're going to live in it. Check the box for check the box for at least 2 years, so we're not paying cap gains. And then we're going to sell it off, and we're going to have substantial profits because we are savvy and we've worked with the market in an appropriate way, and we're going to rinse and repeat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've done it many, many times over the past, 30 years.
That is so amazing. Now, how does this work? Because you've been married for over 30 years. And conscious investor, I know, like marriage has its ups and downs, but then you throw doing business together, and not just doing business together, but this is also the roof over your head. So walk us through how do you have a healthy relationship with your business partner and the roof over your head?
Yeah, not always easy. I think it really, really helps that we both have always been very aligned when it comes to money. So I think that because I'm a money coach and I talk a lot about money, I want to say we have very much benefited in our wealth building and in working together as a business owner than someone who doesn't have alignment with money. So we're both more frugal, we're very careful and conscious of where the money is going. We have that in common. And I've always been the money expert and my husband is always the building expert. And then we meet together to decide what's the style of a house. And we've learned this over time where maybe he did more of what he wanted to do and I didn't interject as much and it might not have worked so well. Or on the other side, I made decisions that I would regret and he was kind of and so we've had to compromise and work together. And even the house that we're in has a really funny story. If it's okay if I share a little bit of what happened with this house.
Yes.
So this house that I'm in right now is a new home. So we're coming up on that 2-year mark. So we're thinking about selling it in the new year. It's next door to the house that we first moved into in Sedona that we still own and that operates as an Airbnb. And the way it has worked is we bought the first house as a remodel, pretty much tore it down and started again. The property had enough land. We added a separate guest house on the property that became an Airbnb. That's how we learned how much we liked Airbnb back in 2017 and how lucrative it could be for us because we could build the property. And then there was an empty lot next door. And I had wanted to buy it, but my husband was like, it's not a good lot. I don't want it. I don't want to build another house, all the reasons why not. And then 2020 comes and the pandemic and we had gone, there's a whole other story about buying a house in Flagstaff that turned into a fiasco because I talked about it at RubeCon, but we went up there temporarily, come back to Sedona. The house now seems really small because the house we had in Flagstaff was big. And I was like, I want a bigger house and there's a really great opportunity. So I start working on him and I come up with I scheme a lot in the relationship. I am always a schemer and he's always afraid. I'm like, I have an idea. And he's like, how fast can I run away from your ideas? So I'm like, I have an idea. And he's like, oh no. And I'm like, we should buy the lot next door. And I know you don't want to build this house, but what if you could teach your daughter and potentially your future son-in-law how to build a house with you? And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, what if we get our daughter Zoe to quit her job because she just gotten out of college and she wasn't really finding satisfaction in her career, and her boyfriend at the time, I'm like, we could get them to quit their jobs, move into our guest house, and then you guys will build this house together and it'll be awesome. And he says to me, thinking, no way are they going to say yes? Sure, you get them to say yes and I'll do it. So they said yes. He was stuck. I made him buy the lot next door. And on the day that we decided it had been for sale, this is the magic of the universe. 3 years it had been for sale. I had been asking, no. The day he calls, the guy's like, I just got 3 offers. And I say to my husband, I don't care what you have to do, but you have to get him to sell this lot to you. There's no question. And I don't know what my husband did, but he got him to sell it to us. And, we build this house. And the other thing I'll just share is that obviously I mentioned we've done really well because of the market, but the even better story than the house is Kelby and Zoe, now they're married. They started an Instagram business that's exploded while they were here. And now they travel the world as content creators, working with some of the biggest brands on the planet in their dream job. And they've already bought their first house and they're about to do it again. So that was only a couple of years ago. And so yeah, never there's my scheming for you.
That is absolutely fantastic. I love it. So when you sell the house, if you choose to sell the house that you're in right now, will you move into the neighboring property?
Yeah, we'll just move back
Or-
into the other house. Exactly. Yeah, and we'll still have that Airbnb, and then I've got to figure out what to do. This is a problem that real estate investors love, is like when you do sell something and now you've got money to work with, it's a very good position to be in.
Yeah, it's the worst problem to have ever. I'm sorry, the best problem to have ever. I had that mixed up there. So I love that you and your husband both, like, you clearly know your lanes, you know your strengths, and then you've refined that over the years so that you can really be truly successful together. And that's beautiful. I think it's not often that you have role models like that. So when I find role models where they've been married, they are likely empty nesters, and they've been successful, to me, I'm all about paying attention. Kathy Fettke, which I'm sure you guys are probably friends also, like, she and Rich, I love just looking in and watching what they do, because they're successful and they're successful together. And when people figure that out and choose to stay married, like, that's a success, because marriage has its ups and downs, and that's part of life and living and human nature. And so I just love seeing people, find that magic and then share that with others. So it's so great. You are a money coach. So you have all this background in corporate America. You have all this financial background, and you've repurposed all of that to support people. Tell us more about what you do as a money coach.
Yeah, it changes on a daily basis, but and what I mean by that is I'm so fortunate to have a community of people. I started this 10 years ago. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I left my financial advising role. I knew I wanted to help people inside of their relationship with money, because I could tell as an advisor to people who were trying to do practical things with their money, I could tell that some people operated from a scarcity mindset. Some people operated from an abundance mindset. I wanted to engineer and write books about how to change your mindset and move in this more abundance direction. And so a lot of my work is around educating. I offer workshops. Like, I've got a workshop coming up, and these are just things that, like, I get excited about. And sometimes I charge for them. Sometimes they're free. I'm in that position. But I wanted to make financial planning more effective for people. People don't understand that you don't need a financial advisor to plan, but it is super important that you understand how all the moving parts come together in one big picture. It's something I had to learn as an advisor. And so I'm hosting a workshop in a couple weeks that's all about the mindset behind financial planning. And then part 2 is, okay, let's do the plan together. Let me help you get started. And I can do that through Zoom, and I can make that available to my community. And I just get these crazy ideas, and I see if my community wants to come to the class, and then I teach it. And it also inspires my books. It inspires the things that I write about and speak about. And I do that over and over again. I host retreats in Sedona in Hawaii that allows my community to come and be with me for, several days in a row and go deep into whatever it is that they're exploring and wanting to move beyond in their lives. So helping people move beyond the old self-image. What I've learned, because I'm more seasoned in this, I've learned that we can only succeed at the level of our own self-image. And most of the time, people live with a self-image from the past, and they have no idea how to create a new self-image, even if they sell their company, even if they get a big windfall, even if they, start a new company. The self-image, if we're not careful, can take many years to change, and that's not necessary. It's something that I've learned how to help people do. So they'll come and spend a few days with me in Sedona privately or in a retreat, and I help people move into that new dimension of who they really want to be.
Oh, man. This is why we should have had this conversation forever ago, Lisa. Girl, we're on the same page. Yes, when we think about just the different versions of who we become over time, I just think of a time continuum, right? And it's fun looking back on the past versions, and it's fun to even contemplate future versions. And it's just, we can't be stuck. Like, identity is so much. I'm going to just echo and cheer everything that you're saying about that, because it affects how we show up to the world. And we can't show up to the world and create the life we want from a fractured identity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-mm. Or an old identity that we didn't realize that we actually have completed all the reasons that identity was even existing. We've completed it, but we don't have any sense. Nobody's ever really talked about this concept with us. So we're like, well, I'm just doing everything I possibly can to live my life, be happy. But then there's this thing, and this thing is actually your whole entire way that you're approaching life is all based on what you've done in the past, rather than the potentiality of who you can be, and that, I think that lasts until the day we take our last breath. Like, I think we continue to grow, and the people who really thrive in life are those that are not done until they are done.
I love it. I absolutely love that. And yes, 1,000,000%. And I've conflicted because I want to go like 5 different directions right now. And so maybe we'll just have to do a part 2 and just simply talk about identity. But right now, I think the direction I'd love to go is to hear about your books. And so maybe we'll harness all of the identity into the money mindset. You have your first book, The Mindful Millionaire, and you have a second book coming out in 2025. So maybe if we talk about the Mindful Millionaire, like, give us, what was the purpose in that book, and the heartbeat, but here's a challenge, through the lens of identity.
Yeah, and I like that. I thought when I wrote The Mindful Millionaire that I had figured a lot of stuff out and I was sharing what I had learned, and that's true. However, it ultimately showed me that I needed the book just as much as anyone else, because I was actually inside of scarcity mindset a lot more than I realized. And so the book is a journal, is a manual, really, a guidebook to say, for those who know that scarcity haunts them, or I've had a lot of couples read it together, because one partner might be a very abundant minded thinker, and then the other one is more scarcity minded, and it creates all these challenges and problems. And so the book was meant to inspire people to question their assumptions and their patterns of how they're living their life. And I talk about, because I have such a strong background in personal finance, I talk about how little education we receive about what money is and what money symbolizes, and how to make sure that money is merely a tool in your life and not any kind of yardstick or measuring stick of like how worthy you are, or how successful you are, or how important you are. Like, I needed to help people understand that you have to separate those things, because we live in a culture that tries to make it sound like if you're more financially successful, you're a better person. And that's ridiculous. That's not true. Like, you could be a wonderful person and be broke. It's not conducive to have that mindset. So I wanted to write about that, and I wanted to help people move along the path. I'm also a very spiritual person, and I wanted to show people that what they might be not noticing in their relationship with their faith, or their relationship with, beyond this life. I wanted to bring those worlds together as well. And so that was another, I had a lot of goals. The book is a long book. So it's 3 parts. And what I found is like the book meets you when you're ready, and maybe you just read the first part and that's plenty. And then the second part is like a process that you go through when you're ready to do it. And then the third part is kind of like, what does it look like on the other side? Like, how do you put this into practice? But my new book that you mentioned is called The Abundance Experiment. It's a fictional parable about a 34-year-old woman who goes on this trip, and it awakens the fact that she has this scarcity mindset, and she returns home to her husband and to her life, and she sort of blows things up because she realizes that's not how she wants to live anymore. And so you follow her on this journey to not just awakening abundance in her own perspective, but also for the whole community that she's a part of. And there's journaling with every chapter. So you're going along with her on the journey, but you're having your own experience with it.
I love that. And I happen to be a huge fan of fables. I actually was sharing with some friends earlier How to Fight a Hydra. That's a very short fable, but The Alchemist, there are so many 10 pillars. There's so many great books that we are as humans, we're driven towards story. We remember story. That's how things were passed along before there was print. So, I mean, story is such a powerful form of communicating and conveying a message. I love that you're writing through a fable. How much of yourself is coming through in that fable?
It's pretty funny because I am a little bit of probably every single character, but none of them are me. They're just little parts of me that can come out. And having never done anything like this before, and I didn't realize I could write fiction and especially page turning fiction, which is not an easy feat. So I've been working on this all year. But there's a little bit of me everywhere. And then there's also the parts that I wanted to learn, the parts that I want to better integrate of myself, where, there's a big difference in life between knowing something, like your head knows this thing, versus like living it to the core of your being. And the writing, and I think this is back to my first comment about the Mindful Millionaire, I knew this stuff, but I wasn't totally living it. And the book and writing the book and sharing the book with people helps me to hold myself to a higher standard of asking, like, what keeps you from fully living into this role? And it pushes me, it pushes my husband, because he's there every step of the way, reading my work, giving me feedback. Like, we've had some pretty heated conversations because he's like, I think I see what you're doing here. Like, you're giving me a message in these characters, aren't you? I'm like, maybe.
You're scheming again.
I'm scheming. Exactly. I'm like, okay, maybe some people need this, but I need this. And my husband definitely needs this. So then I write him in.
I love that. And that actually answers the next question I was going to ask you, which was, like, what did you learn about yourself? Because every time I write a lot. And so, and I'm working on a book. So every time we write, we're learning more and discovering more about ourselves. Was there like any surprises that you had as you were writing the Abundance Experiment?
The biggest realization, and we hear this in books all the time, like, you are a product of the people that you surround yourself with, that you can't help but have them rub off on us. When I was writing the book, I realized how easy it is to get in these ruts with, could be our partner, could be our friends. And we think that we're pushing ourselves to become our best self, but because the other person might not be so supportive of that part of you, of that new self-identity, you keep getting tripped up and you go backwards and you kind of find the common ground that works. It's okay. It's good enough. And that was the big realization, is that's not true. Another one that was really near and dear to my heart in writing. So I wrote this book through 2 workshops where I brought my community in. When I first started the book, I got a whole bunch of people to show up. This is crazy pants. Like I can't believe I took this risk and vulnerability. I thought it was going to be a nonfiction book. So I got like 45 people. We're coming onto these Zoom calls. I'm giving them the chapter. Then we're going to talk about it. And then all of a sudden, they liked the fictional story that I gave them in the beginning more than they liked the nonfiction stuff. And so it encouraged me to keep writing the fiction. They're like, well, what happens next? And I was like, I don't know. Like, it was just going to be like an opening story. They're like, no, keep going. So I did this twice. So there's been 2 major versions of the book, live, created in front of other people. And the stuff that I started in the beginning, my community was so excited and they were so caught up in it. They just thought it was awesome. Whereas it was actually really not great writing, but they were happy for me to be exploring it. And the topics that were coming up were helpful to them. But now, 4 or 5 versions later, I'm watching huge personal transformation for myself as well as other people. And the reason for that is it's all of my work always comes back to, I'm very good at asking super powerful, inspiring questions to people, not just randomly, but inside of an experience. And so the questions and the journaling is everything. It's like that in The Mindful Millionaire, but it's going to be like that in the new book. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's what came.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And really, that concept of who we are around, that homeostasis that we can find, that common ground that, and I think this may land for you is, I mean, like, we're always going to default to the lowest energy in the room, not the highest. Like, and so like just saying like, okay, well, what's the baseline of the lowest energy in the room? And is that who I want to be and mirror, and how is that going to affect me? And so, and sometimes we have to be aware, and especially if you're, around people that you don't want to, kick out of your life, just learning how to encourage them also and raise their energy up.
You reminded me like where I wanted to go, which is in all of the journaling that my clients were like giving me back. I can't even begin to tell you how often it was that people were talking about they didn't realize the impact that somebody was having in their life. And it's not that the relationship ends, and obviously it hasn't ended for my husband and I, but like having tough conversations about what's not working for you, setting better boundaries about what's an acceptable conversation, what's an acceptable amount of pressure that you can put on me for something that I don't want to participate in, like being more outspoken of what's most important to you and making that super clear that you are allowed to have boundaries. You are allowed to want what you want. You don't have to always succumb to what other people are telling you. And I think many of us, women maybe, like we sometimes cave without even realizing that we're caving around our dreams or things that are super important to us because somebody else is really important. We don't want to rock the boat. And I just realized you got to rock the boat if you really want to live your best life.
Oh, it's so true. And I will say, by way of coaching and such, I noticed that so many, I could say it's like maybe even split 50-50. I think it's a personality thing, where a temperamental difference where you might be more or less willing to cave to someone else. And a lot of times I feel just by being a woman, maybe I would want to say women only, but I see it so often in men too, kind of wanting to fall in line. Like, I want to just make my wife happy or my partner. Like, and so it's really interesting how that happens. And I think that's one of the unique things about, creating that successful relationship is like having that freedom to be able to talk equally, openly, honestly, candidly. My husband told me last night, when we were going to bed, he's like, I don't think most people have these conversations. And we were just, like, I said, really? I mean, and you guys might be the same way because we're talking about things in a very rich, meaningful way. We were not having an argument. We're just having a conversation about something. I was getting ready to doze off, so I can't exactly remember what it was about, but it was something of substance. And I'm like, I don't know. This is just how our minds work. But finding that zone to where voices can be heard and honored. So important.
Yeah. And not talking about like too deep and meaningful of topics right before bed. He's like, he knows when I'm going there and he'll be like, oh no, nope. Like he won't even let me talk because he knows that like I have this uncanny ability to bring up topics right as his head hits the pillow. And then I'm like, okay, good night. And he's like, are you kidding me? So I've learned. It only took me 37 years.
We all learn over time. That's how it goes. I love it. So you've got your new book coming out. It's a Fable. I want to go back to the Mindful Millionaire, and I want to just do a quick check-in to circle back on that and say, how would somebody determine that they have a scarcity mindset? And I say this because mine has shown up in very surprising ways, and I wouldn't have identified it as a scarcity mindset had I not done some other work, right? And so now I'm like, I can see that. I'm like, wow, that's actually coming from a place of scarcity. What the heck, girl? And I can have that inner dialogue. How does somebody who's never done any of that work realize that's where that's my baseline operating system?
Yeah. I'm going to answer this question first by saying it's filled with paradox. And the reason that's really important is there are no universal absolutes. And when people like have the audacity, which I would never in a million years, even though I've been working with people in scarcity and abundance for all this time, I would never tell somebody that's a scarcity mindset. Like to me, that's one of the rudest things we could possibly say to somebody else, period. You have no idea. It is an internal discussion. And a lot of people, the reason I'm passionate about that is people come to me and I'm like, what did they tell you? Like people are frozen because somebody said, well, you've got a scarcity mindset and you need to get out of that. And I'm like, no, that's not, we're not starting from a good place. So filled with paradox, nuance, both and all of that. The one thing that we can ask ourselves is, am I shutting down the possibilities in this situation, in this moment? Am I only seeing one or two options? And they don't feel great. It's probably a good indicator that there's something going on inside of you that has shut you down. And there's a lot of science about this. So there's a book about scarcity. They say that when we are obsessed with there not being enough food, resources, money, opportunities, real estate deals, you fill in the blank, the brain has a tendency to shrink, and it's like losing a full night's sleep. We lose about 13 points in IQ. And instead of there being 20 options, we have only a couple, and they seem very dire and urgent and like, we got to do it. Like, this is just some flavor of it. So our biggest ally is to notice what's happening in this moment. Do you feel like you're doing this out of fear? Is fear the key driver to what you're deciding here? Like that would be another characteristic. Can you bring in an abundant possibility? Could you step aside and brainstorm about all the positive things that could happen as a result of this decision? So you get yourself out of that, and then you're able to be like more reasonable in what you do next. We all do it. It's a biological, physiological response, psychological response. Like if it touches all the parts of being human. And so just learning that. Now, I will also say, because I've been on this journey for so long, we can reach a point in life, and this is where I'm so big on saying, I have enough world. Like I don't have to make more money. I have enough. And I have a financial plan, and I can see how it's going to be okay. And I understand that even if it all fell apart, I'm going to be totally comfortable probably my husband's like, I'll go to work at Home Depot. And I'm like, okay, I'll go find some. I like waiting tables, actually. It's kind of weird, but like, we'll find something. We're going to be okay. And just from the ability to operate with like, no matter what, we're going to be okay, it changes your whole entire life.
Mm. Oh my gosh. All of that. One of my favorite, I always say todos, just Spanish for all, like todos, all of this. Yes. And amen. And that's actually how I realized I was operating from scarcity I'm like, wait, this feels like energetically in my being, it feels like fear. Like I can like locate it and I'm like, that is fear. What is going on? Like, and that's just knowing that it's like, wait a second altogether. I ask myself often the question of how would I respond to this situation if I knew everything was going to turn out just fine? Because just to your point of like everything constricts and we get into our primitive brain and into this primal way of being and interacting with the world around us that's, fight or flight. And it's like, or freeze. And we're like, wait. That's not what the world we're living in. No tigers are coming at us. So what would I do if everything's going to be okay? And wow, that's really powerful. I love it. Lisa, as we wrap up, I know that the Conscious Investor is, interested in your work, The Mindful Millionaire, and interested in picking up your new book and following you. Like, what are the best ways for them to follow your work, to get your work, and to support you?
Thank you. A couple options. I do have a website. I do give away the first chapter of The Mindful Millionaire and some other meditations and things. And you can go to wealthclinic.com/vision. So that gets you a little bit more. But I've recently been posting a lot more on YouTube. So Mindful Millionaire, I have a video about the story of me leaving my financial advising role that really hit a nerve. And it's excited me to like be in touch with the people in video form. So I've been creating more videos and I have a podcast, but those are great ways to get started.
Absolutely love it. Lisa, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for a great conversation and just for contributing through, your workshops, through your work, through your coaching, and building beautiful houses.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, for all the amazing work that you do. I just want to ask you all these same questions. So we're going to have you come over and join me on my show.
Oh my gosh, we would have a fantastic time, another fantastic time, and I would absolutely love that.
Exactly.
Conscious Investor, make haste. You want to make sure that you go and follow Lisa. Follow her YouTube channel. That's like a big deal. That's always helpful and encouraging when we gain new followers. And speaking of new followers, you know what? We always love growing this show. And I say we because we're in this together, Conscious Investor. I get amazing guests like Lisa to come on the show. The guests come because they want to support you. And one way that you can help, guests, say like, oh yeah, I definitely want to come on the show is leave an honest rating and review. Let us know. Let us know what stood out to you, what supported you, what encouraged you. And then everyone, these are two ways you support the show for free, is share this podcast with one person. If it's this episode or a different episode, whatever episode you want, just share it with one person. And in that process, we organically grow the show. We can double it overnight if everyone does that just this one day. And that's really powerful because this show attracts guests, attracts people that are making a difference in the world on a whole different level. And so we want to just amplify that. I appreciate you, Conscious Investor. Until next time, cheers to your health, your mindset, and your wealth.